But I mean, as a sub, there's an age difference between you and your parents. I mean, how can you always relate to your parents? Sometimes it's a bit odd to think that your parents are going to be finding someone for you, and other people say that, you know, your parents know you the best, but I mean, is that actually true?
I'm glad you worded the question like this, that as a sub, there's an age difference between you and your parents, as if you're talking to me, but I know it's hypothetical.
Right.
But the reality was this also true. Yeah. There's a huge gap of generation between myself and my parents. I am the product of an arranged marriage. Not just in America, I arranged my marriage from America into Pakistan. And at a time when, going back a number of years, I'll reveal my age if I do that, and they'll discredit me as a source to discuss things with them, so I won't go that far. But I will say that, yes, there were a number of questions that would come into my mind. Well, how can I truly believe that my parents can know the right woman for me? They cannot. They can only give their best judgment. Right. And as was suggested, that you must trust that that's exactly what they're going to do if you have a good relationship with your parents. And thereby you accept their decision, thinking they're doing it in your best interest. However, if somehow that breaks down, and we know, let's be realistic again, let's talk real here. It is not always the case where a parent has a healthy relationship with their parent, with their child.
Yeah, let's be honest.
And the children they struggle with this, you know, especially in Asian culture, and not so much in Western culture, because we've been learning in Western culture to question and to not just complain, but, you know, to kind of bring out our points and views with our parents. But in Asian culture, it's like, be quiet, just take it. Take your lumps for 40 years if you have to, but just take your lumps. Now, there's one out for all of us in this community by Allah's grace. We have a Khalifa who is above our parents in a sense. He's our spiritual and moral guide, and we can always consult with him that, look, I'm in a bind here. I love my parents, I want to respect them. I have all this pressure on me, but I don't know what to do. I can't accept this. I don't want to live this life. It will not be true to who I am. And yet I can't reject my parents. And see how he will perhaps consult or advise the parents that in this case you are not making a good decision for your child. And that could be a good way to help.
All right, let's move to the audience. I mean, for those of you who have had an arranged marriage here, what kind of role did your family play in that? Were the parents a bit pushy or clean?
I think that just following up on Azizab's point here about trusting parents and so on. I mean, we know Holy Prophet ﷺ arranged marriages, and one of the marriages that he arranged was Hazrat Zainab and Hazrat Zaid, who was his adopted son, and the marriage ended in divorce. So I mean, you trust, but there are things that can go wrong, and it's not the biggest deal in the world. That's why divorce is permissible. The point is to give a good go at it, as you mentioned. But apart from the pressures, and some of them are, you know, as Isab has mentioned, you know, the parents' expectations can be silly, you know, in some cases, like you know, wanting a light-skinned person, you know, these kind of things. But then there's reconciling that with the external pressures. Another term for Gog and Magog is Bollywood and Hollywood. You know, these two things which create such a model, a bad model, really, in every person's mind that the people today really have to struggle against, which people didn't have to 60, 100 years ago.
Okay, that's a good point. Let's get some more views as well. Wahida, would you like to add to that? In terms of what kind of pressures come into play around the marriage time? Inam Sahib, do you want to?
Well, I'm not married, so I remember you saying this question was for married people, so I can only... no.
But what kind of cultural pressures are there as well? I mean, looking for someone.
Well, obviously, if you're living in society, then you are bound to not just look at your own personal preferences, but also, I would imagine, the views of your parents, etc., would be also important. So, for one, I think it has to be something which is compatible. I believe Islam lays a lot of emphasis on compatibility. For example, the Holy Quran mentions that the righteous for the righteous, etc. So I think compatibility is a major aspect that has to be looked at. Right. And obviously you're going to maintain your current relationships as well as your future ones. So therefore it's important that your wife or your husband-to-be is compatible with the life that you currently lead.
Okay, let's take one more view here. Yeah, Samsa.
Yeah, I think I just would like to add a point, which is, I think, obviously, building on Inam brother's point about compatibility, I think the number one thing is taqwa. Okay, I think the parents should really consider the fact that if their child is a God-fearing person, really close to Allah, prays, really active in their faith, I think they should try and match with somebody who is really active as well, lest that person bring the other down. And if your child, your child isn't really that, doesn't practice too much and stuff, but is a good person, I think you should also try and match that with possibly a female who is, possibly similar level or something like that. Because I think it could cause a big clash in the family. It could end up in divorce and things like that because they don't understand each other.
Yeah, okay. Abul Sab, what would you like to comment on that point? Would you agree?
You cannot have a match 100% equal. So somebody was mentioning Hollywood. We used to call it in our times celluloid culture. Now it is digital, all digital. So there are, during the young age, people have a kind of concept, so-called concept, which has to be fulfilled, otherwise I'll not get married. That is wrong. That is where you have to consult, and that is arranged marriage we were talking about earlier on.
Do those misconceptions only happen in the West, or do you think it's
no,
in the
East? No, it happens over there as well. I think in some respect it is more over there. Okay. But ultimately, the result comes up when you take taqwa into consideration and you take the advice from your guardians and parents and prayers from Khalifa. You get to the correct lady or correct person you are waiting for. Okay. It does work that way.
Okay. Asif, you had a question earlier on just before we went for the break. Would you just like to pose that question again?
Basically the question was, how do you know the true character of a person from an arranged marriage when you meet up in an environment where it's arranged and you're around your parents, their parents, their families and everything? How do you know that they will actually portray the true characters?
As a self,
basically.
That's an excellent question, and it's a natural concern, right? I mean, you cannot truly know another human being. The proof of that is, you look into our society in the West, I can't speak definitely about the United Kingdom, but in the United States of America, couples live together for years. So-called happily living together, and then one day decide, let's get married, let's just do it now, This is 15 years, 20 years down the road, they get married, and 3 years later they're divorcing.
Yeah, okay. Something that I've noticed is that some people actually, when they're looking to marry other people, they don't have to necessarily, they're not only looking for a Muslim bride. Some people are saying that they're going for, Christian girls or Jewish girls, and the way they justify this is that in the Quran it says you can marry people of the book, the Ahl Kitab. So Abul Sab, could you just explain this a bit more?
Surah Ma'idah, verse number 5, Allah has allowed أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتُ وَنِسَاؤُهُمْ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ. Well, that is okay. But at the same time, in Surah Baqarah, Allah has categorically, Surah Baqarah, verse number 222, Allah has said, and marry not the idolatrous women until they believe. So you have to avoid that section of Ahl Kitab, which is now totally idolaters. I mean, they are believing in such gods who do not exist. It is important to have a happy life with a companion who has common values. That is the secret to our happiness. You have to share the common values. But when you have distinctive differences and you are far away from each other as far as ideology is concerned, you are heading for a problem.
Malana, as an Islam, do you think people are using that as just an excuse to go out and marry whom they please?
No, I don't think it's an excuse. And actually at this point my comportment tends to drop, because now I'm in the field. I'm a missionary. I see both ends. I see the startup, I see the end. And I see the struggle that had left to the end, which wasn't pleasant, wasn't the happy ever after as they were hoping for. Right. I've seen it too much in my lifetime in the West, where the couple, the man starts out with this attitude, well, I've had permission, God allows me to marry someone outside of the Jamaat and outside of Islam, and therefore I'm going to do it, we're in love, this is going to be forever. And even as you attempt to consult them or to counsel them, that you have to, again, look down the road. do you believe this will always be the way it is now? Because you understand you are going to grow. And your wife may or may not grow along with you. What will you do then as a man? Children will be there. You will tend to now to struggle with this issue. I want to go to the masjid. My wife either doesn't want to go or wants to take my child to the church or to the synagogue or to the temple or wherever, or to some chanting session, whatever it is. Man has a hard time dealing with that. So as Maulana Sahib has said here, you still want to find a woman that you believe will grow with you spiritually and morally as you are moving forward in life, and then you can maintain some sense of happily ever after. Yet in my experience, I've seen many rocky roads along the way that have led to the breakup of marriages and the struggle with children.